Hey guys, welcome to Realization Hub. My name is Michelle Corazao-Dinu, and I'm an intuitive counselor, energy healer, and channeler who loves to bridge the gap between the unseen world of spirit, consciousness, energy, and intuition so that it can apply to your everyday human experience. Today's video is an energy update for the new moon in Gemini, and I will be going over any major energetic themes and any wisdom that wants to come through for you. So if you enjoy these videos, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's talk about the new moon in Gemini on June 6th. The new moon will be in Gemini at 16 degrees and 17 minutes. And again, I have my computer below the camera, so I'm just gonna check my notes as I talk. So yes, the new moon in Gemini. We've got some interesting things going on here. We have the sun in Gemini at 16 degrees. We're going to have Venus in Gemini at 16 degrees and the moon, at 16 degrees. So there's this like conjunction of the moon, the sun, and Venus together. And technically it's in a wider orbit kind of conjunction with Mercury as well. So we have all of these energies in Gemini in conjunction with each other. Mercury has to do with our mind, our ability to process information, learn information, communicate, understand. It's the messenger of the gods, so it can translate, information, into the world. Information, spiritual information, our wisdom, our energetic information. Mercury has that ability to take that information and translate it and have us become conscious of it, aware of it, understand it, process it, bring it to our understanding. Now, Mercury is at home in Gemini. It's very comfortable here. When Mercury is in Gemini, it's a very quick energy. It can be very quick, fast, adaptable, flexible, very curious, interested, very mentally stimulating. Our minds might be very active at this time. We might be multitasking a lot mentally at this time, just intellectually dabbling in a lot of different things, thinking about a lot of different things, a lot of things happening at once that we're mentally aware of. And we have that conjunct with the moon. The moon in Gemini is going to bring up, probably what I'm sensing about that is like a lot of these connections between our minds and our emotions, and our emotions and our minds, and our intuition and our minds, and how we can our telepathy, our ability to hear voices, our clairaudience, our ability to psychically, our intuition becoming very telepathic, becoming aware of our own thoughts that are not ours, thoughts that we might be picking up from other people. Where our emotions affect our thoughts, patterns within us, our subconscious patterns, our subjective reality that affects the way we think, affects the way we communicate, affects the way we nurture ourselves and other people, affects our bodies, things like that. Then we have the sun in Gemini. This is where we're really in this kind of archetypical energy at this time of exploring our intellect, communicating, improving our communication, improving our social skills, learning something new, learning a lot of new things at once, short-term travel, making connections, networking, interacting with our siblings, interacting with our neighbors, interacting with our acquaintances, our extended family. These could be, so yeah, that's kind of like the sun and Gemini. And then we got Venus in Gemini. This is influencing our relationships, our values, and our money, and what brings pleasure into our lives. And having that in Gemini, we might be valuing information. We might be valuing new information. We might be valuing communication skills, social skills, those types of skills where we're not just letting our emotions get the best of us. We're taking our emotions and we're learning how to communicate them in new ways in our relationships. where, we're mentally stimulated in our relationships, we're on the same page on a mental level in our relationships, where we're sharing the same reality mentally in our relationships, where we are, working through distractions, working through where we might get bored, learning something new about the other person, being interested in what they know, being interested in who they are, sharing information with others. So these energies are conjunct around this new moon, and there's definitely something happening, in the stars right now in regards to our relationships. Our relationships, again, I'm going to kind of talk about some bigger themes outside of this new moon, but there's a bigger theme with the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra. And having the North Node in Aries, we've been really cultivating our individual self. We've been coming into our individual needs, our individual desires, our individual, ending and rebirthing new identities, integrating old identities, coming into more wholeness, allowing our identity to change, to go through a metamorphosis of some kind, to come into our new values, our new way of showing up, exploring new territory in our lives, opening up to new potentials in our lives. This is all the North Node in Aries type of energy. And with that comes the South Node in Libra. The South Node shows us where we have a lot of experience, where we have a lot of wisdom, where we might have a lot of baggage, junk that we might need to get rid of. And that's in Libra, which means, we're still in this overall theme of really letting go of old relationship dynamics. And so that's why over the past year or so, we've had a lot of growth periods in our relationships, with how you show up in relationships, how other people show up with you, really vetting our relationships, seeing who's going to stay, who's going to go, who's going to grow with us, who's going to change with us, who's going to still accept us when we change, when our lives change, things like that. And the good news is we've got a lot of wisdom about our relationships to pull from. But yeah, there's this overarching theme of our relationships, and this new moon does seem to put an emphasis on our relationships because we have the new moon conjuncting with Venus and Mercury. And so this does bring about, even Jupiter's kind of, Jupiter in Gemini is conjuncting Mercury, and so there is an expansion happening here. There's a higher learning that's happening here with Jupiter conjuncting Mercury. There's an expansion of our minds that is happening around this new moon, an expansion of our learning, an expansion of communication skills, an expansion of social skills, relational skills, an expansion of higher learning, new learning, an expansion of who we connect with, how we connect with others. That's definitely happening around this new moon. But yeah, all of this, so there's this overall benefit that we're experiencing because we still have Jupiter and Venus as these planets that are highly involved with this new beginning. Okay, and those planets are beneficial planets. They bring about positive results. So even if we have challenges coming up at this time, even if we have difficulties coming up with this time, it is resulting in something beneficial for us. On a subjective level, it might be difficult. On a subjective level, it might feel harsh. On a subjective level, it could be challenging. But overall, it's helping us to expand. It's helping us to helping us to come into our values. It's helping us to release what's old and come into what we need on an individual level. And so this is definitely a new beginning involving our relationships on an intellectual level because we have this happening in Gemini, and so this has to do with our minds. It has to do with our intellect. It has to do with our communication. It has to do with learning, learning new things, applying what we learn to our relationships, expansion. Okay, and so because again, I'm going to go into this outer theme again. We've got Pluto retrograde in Aquarius right now, and that is a type of phase that we're in over the next 5 months or so, where we'll be reworking a lot of the same old obstacles, a lot of the same old problems, a lot of the same old issues, but coming, ascending through them. You know, it's this Pluto retrograde is a big ascension process in the collective. And so we will be dealing with old stuff coming back around again, our dark stuff coming back around again. And by dark stuff, I don't necessarily mean evil. I mean the hidden stuff, the subconscious stuff, our fears, our pain, our wounds, where we got hurt, where we're playing small, where we're playing victim, where we're self-sabotaging ourselves, where we're limiting ourselves, where we need to evolve. You know, Pluto's all about evolution, our soul's evolution. And so when we have Pluto going retrograde, we're reworking some stuff on a soul level, you know, where we still have this pattern, we still have this obstacle, we still have this issue, we still have this shadow side of us that we need to rework. But we're in this retrograde, it's an ascension. You know, and so we're busting through our own upper limits, our own glass ceilings energetically, you know, on an individual level with the North Node in Aries. And so what does that look like? It looks like hitting these energetic obstacles that feel like they've been there forever and that it's not possible. You know, stuff that feels like it's not possible, but you break through it anyways. And usually with an ascension process, you're dealing with a lot of resistance, you know, and that resistance may be coming from within you, where you're just like stopping and putting on the brakes and digging in your heels and denying reality and, you know, refusing to take a step. Or that resistance could be manifested outside of you, where it feels like the entire world is against you, like you just can't move forward in your experience. And that can be what it's like to encounter that outer resistance that's actually manifested from within you. And so I'm mentioning Pluto in retrograde because it looks like now that we've gone through a big purging in our relationship spaces over the last year, that now we're taking our relationships to an ascended level. And, you know, this is quite a new beginning around this. You know, we've got the moon, the sun, Venus, Mercury kind of conjunct, and we have Jupiter conjuncting with Mercury. So definitely, possibly a very fast, because it's in Gemini, a very fast kind of ascension in our relationships and in our values. We might be looking at where we have been, we might be experiencing some ways in which we've been too rigid in our beliefs, too stubborn, too stuck, maybe energetically constipated mentally, you know, and lacking our ability to just observe our minds, lacking our ability to process our mental thoughts and our beliefs and our emotions in a productive way. Looking at where we've been too rigid in our relationships, you know, maybe needing to become more adaptable mentally, a little bit more flexible, a little bit more malleable. I'm noticing that this new moon could bring up things for relationships in which we may need to be open to different ways of communicating, different ways of relating, different strategies, different tools. You know, there's so many ways to self-regulate yourself when you get triggered in a relationship. There's so many ways to communicate through a conflict. There's so many ways to work with your nervous system. There's so many ways to build trust and openness and love in a relationship. There's so many different ways we can do that, and this may be a new moon where it becomes emphasized, in which it's so important to keep learning these skills, that our relationships aren't just this, a place where it's just happy-go-lucky all the time. Like, your conflict will come up in your relationships. Your darkness will come up in your relationships. Your shadow side will come up in your relationships. It will come up in your relationships out of nowhere sometimes. It will come up through the same old pattern repeating itself again in your relationships. And this is a new moon where it kind of feels like on a collective level, we're being prompted to learn new skills, embody new skills for the sake of overall change in our relationships, embodying real change in our relationships, change in which we become more secure, change in which we become more reliable, change in which we become more safe, change in which we're more informed. And so this could be a time where people are learning more about trauma, they're learning more about their nervous system, they're learning more about communication skills, social skills, emotional regulation, relationship, information about relationships, our attachment styles. There's so much to learn that can help us embody differently in our relationships. Not a lot of people, well, I don't want to say that, but I want to say that there are some people out there that just don't find the value of healthy communication, healthy relationship skills, healthy coping skills, and we're on this edge, on a collective level where people are valuing that. They're valuing this education and this learning around this. They do better when they learn about these communication skills and social skills and relationship skills. They're doing better in their lives. They're doing better at work. They're getting better results at work. They're getting better results in their relationships at home. They're getting better results with their kids. They're getting better results with strangers. They're getting better results. It can help us move through our challenges, even our difficult challenges. And, quite frankly, if we're going to, as a collective, come to some level of understanding, some level of cooperation, some level of moving through major challenges on the planet. I mean, we're not talking about you guys know, we're not talking about little challenges anymore. These are huge problems on the planet, and it's kind of like if the planet was a relationship, it would be like trying to get a divorce right now. It's not going well. There's just like so much separation, so much battle, so much conflict, so many challenges. And this is where there's a new beginning around, okay, well, how can we learn to communicate? How can we learn to relate? How can we learn to have the social skills we need so that we can move through our difficulties, so that we can move through our challenges, so that we can move through our hardships, and do that in a way that provides beneficial results, beneficial change, more security, more abundance, more reliability. That's kind of what's coming up in this new moon. This may be a time where we are really putting in the work with our whatever we're learning around this time, whatever new information you're coming into at this time, new skills, new changes, new levels of expanding in our minds. This is kind of like a person that is at practice, practicing sprints, like on the track. That's kind of the image that I'm getting. They're practicing their sprints, and each time they're trying to do better than their last sprint, and they're practicing for the real life marathon or the real life race that they're getting ready for, and so they're practicing. It's okay if they're messing up. It's okay if they're failing. but they're also improving. They're practicing and improving and getting better so that when they encounter this stuff in the real world, you know, that they're going to show up differently, that they're going to show up with the best results. And that's kind of the energy I notice with Mercury conjuncting Jupiter. That's also in conjunction with Uranus and Taurus. So there's that big overarching change, this big embodiment of change, and a beneficial change that involves us practicing with our communication, practicing with the way we think, you know, practicing. Generally speaking, with this new moon, it's definitely a beginning that's involving it could be involving our relationships or values, especially our long-term relationships. They're really getting highlighted in this new moon, where we might be opening up to learning new information that supports us in the way we communicate and relate to each other on a mental and emotional level, and just busting through our upper limits in those relationships. And so some good questions to be asking yourself around this time is, where have I been too mentally stubborn, you know, or too rigid or too congested around, you know, processing my mental and emotional information, and having to deal with my values and money in relationships. And where can I be more adaptable? Where can I embrace change? Where can I learn more, be informed more, you know, and apply this in practical ways to embody bigger changes in our relationships and in our lives that involve relationships, you know? We're here on Earth. It's not just this isolated experience. You can try to isolate yourself all you want, but we're going through some big changes on the planet, and so that does involve our interactions with other people. So I do think that's being highlighted in this new moon on some level. We also have Persephone in Sagittarius, which will be opposing those Gemini placements. And so we might be balancing out this naivety within us. You know, Persephone is this goddess that basically went on this journey from being this very innocent, naive maiden to transforming into the queen of the underworld. You know, it's a maturing process. It's a maturing process where we, you know, let go of our naive nature. We embrace the crisis or the challenges at hand, and we mature through them until we come into our authority. And so when we have Persephone in Sagittarius, this might be shedding some light on where we may be still immature and still naive in our own spiritual philosophies, in our own higher learning, in our own relationship to truth and freedom, and how that shows up in our minds, in our relationships, and in our thinking. And you know, it could be something like where we might have a tendency to just want to play and have fun and enjoy the freedom in our relationships, and not having to deal with our dark side, not having to deal with our challenges in our relationships. And where we have to kind of grow up a little bit and embrace this new learning, you know, for the benefit of our relationships, for the benefit of change, for the benefit of our values, for the benefit of what we want to create, you know, in this bigger change. And that means we have to make a plan. Not make a plan, but be ready, you know, for when our conflict comes up, you know, when our darkness comes up in our relationships, our shadow sides, because it will come up. And we have to be ready and kind of schooled, I guess, in our ability to be emotionally and mentally prepared for that. What are we going to do when conflict comes up? What are we going to do when our wounds come up to the surface? What are we going to do when we're going through big changes in our relationships? What are we going to do when our old patterns come up and our shadows come up? What are we going to do when we get really triggered in our relationships? How are we going to handle that? You know, and Persephone opposing these Gemini placements placements will likely bring up some of that shadowy stuff that we need to look at, where we need to mature, where we need to come into our authority, where we might need to release some naivety, where we might need to embrace some of our integrate some of our shadows and actually get real, get a little bit more embodied with our truth in our relationships, show up differently on a mental level, show up differently in a new way in our communication. So something I really think is going to be like the main growth period around this time. There's a couple of them, but we have Saturn in Pisces that will be squaring this new moon. It's going to be squaring the sun, the moon, Venus in Gemini. And so Saturn is a planet of, it can be a malefic planet. So it can really bring up our challenges. It can bring up our karma, our past life karma. It can bring up our limitations, our boundaries. It can really bring up where we need to do the work, where we need to mature, where we need to deal with some harsh lessons. It can also provide us structure. It can provide us the presence and the structure to show up differently, to do the work, to take things one step at a time, and to get results and to get rewards over time for the work that we do. And so Saturn can, when it's squaring these placements, what it's doing is it's bringing up this, it's challenging us. It's challenging us in a growth period around, the image that I got from this was like almost like a parent spanking a child. So I felt this strong discipline energy at this time, like having to really discipline our thinking, really having encountering those challenges and those harsh conditions, those hardships that we might be going through around this time, where we need a lot of mental discipline, a lot of emotional discipline, and maybe in the past, when we went through challenges in our relationships, we would just, handle it in a very old traditional way, Saturn, like seeing a parent spanking their child reminds me of a very old way of disciplining, and now there's a lot of new ways we can work with children when they misbehave outside of, physical abuse. And so this is kind of the growth period that I sense. There's a little bird on my lanai chirping at me. That's so cute. This might be a time where we might have really old tendencies, like past, stuff from our past coming up around dealing with our communication challenges, our relationship challenges, our emotional challenges, and where we need to expand and embrace a new way of, how do we create structure and discipline around our minds, our communication, our boundaries in our relationships. I mean, this could definitely bring up boundary issues in our relationships, discipline issues that involve our mind, our emotions, and our relationships, and our values, and our money. But we have old ways of creating those boundaries, old ways of creating discipline in these areas, in our body, in our relationships, in our purpose, that have been really strict and harsh and rough. And we might be confronted with that around this new moon, like where we're showing up too rough, or where we're holding on to an energetic pattern that's being manifested in our life, where, when we make a mistake or we screw something up, where we're being way too harsh, way too rough, way too difficult, making it more difficult than it needs to be. And where we might have to expand, break through an upper limit, and show up differently, communicate differently, embody new information, so that when we need to address a conflict, make boundaries, apply some discipline in our lives, that it doesn't feel so harsh. So again, there's this theme of maturing that's kind of coming up in this new moon. And I was sensing, because I got that image of a parent spanking their inner child, and Gemini to me can be very childlike, very curious and childlike. And, so it could, with the North Node in Aries as well, I mean, this could be bringing up a lot of inner child stuff for us to work through at this time, where our inner child may need some level of boundaries and discipline. Our inner child, we have our inner child that is like the most vulnerable part of us. And when we have a good relationship with our inner child, we can be highly creative. I mean, we can create worlds, within worlds. I mean, we can create new things. We can create new possibilities. Anything is possible. We can be curious. We can experiment. We can play. We can be so bright and shiny. Okay. But then we also have our wounded inner child. Okay. And, we still have Chiron, in the mix of this North Node. Yeah, we still have Chiron in the mix of this North Node, and it's still conjuncting Mars, around this new moon. And so, yeah, continuing to deal with our wounds, maybe our inner child wounds. And we might have an inner child that was never taught social skills, that was never taught communication skills, that was never given the proper development around boundaries, or communicating in ways that are productive, and so we might have to deal with our own inner child at this time, and just where we need to make boundaries, internal boundaries, with ourselves. With our own inner child, where we have to recognize that we just can't interrupt everyone all the time, or we have to recognize where we can't just say what we want to say but not be receptive to what someone else wants to say. Just where the inner child might be kind of stuck in this paradigm of woundedness, and we really need to work with that wounded child, not just to love that inner child and heal that inner child, but to grow up, to mature, and actually show up differently in our communication. So this could be a beautiful time, a beautiful opportunity for those of you going through more of a self-healing journey to reparent your inner child, and to really look at the old ways that your father, your mother may have disciplined you or corrected you or provided rules or structure for you, and where you can show up differently for yourself and do that differently, not just for yourself, but also for your relationships. So the moon is the new moon's in Gemini, and we have that sextiling Chiron in Aries. And so, yeah, this could be a new moon where we're kind of shaking up our old patterns and creating new patterns mentally, new patterns emotionally. And a good image that I saw for that was like a Zen garden, where you can like draw out those beautiful little pathways, and then you can shake up the garden, the sand, and you can create totally new designs and pathways. And so this is an opportunity for healing. It could still bring up our old patterns here, our old wounds here, but it is an opportunity to like rewire our thinking, rewire the patterns in our thinking, our emotional patterns, like really mix it up, really stir it up, and bring in our new thinking, bring in our new way of emoting, bring in our new way of processing, bringing in our new way of creating. So it does remind me of like kind of rewiring the brain here in this new moon. We also have Jupiter in Gemini that will be in a trine with Pluto in Aquarius. Now, Pluto, like I mentioned, is all about our soul's evolution, and it will bring us through a transformation, and it will bring us into our actual power, not power over others, but it will empower us, and but in order to do that, we have to deal with our stuff, we have to deal with our shadow side. And, Pluto can kind of represent that dark masculine side. It can be where we have wounds and smallness and, limitations in our masculine energy that are hidden from us, that are sabotaging us, that are limiting us in some way. And so with a trine to Pluto, we're definitely receiving some natural transformative assistance here, with this new moon. And it's trining Jupiter. So overall, this transformation is bringing about an expansion, overall, like a big transformative expansion, at this time, that's, that, could be intense. Okay. Pluto can be intense. It can bring us to the extremes, but it produces a beneficial result. So if you are going through an intense experience around this new moon, an intense expansion, an intense growth period around this new moon, just recognize it's with Jupiter. It's going to bring out beneficial results. It's going to bring us to more wisdom. It's going to bring us to higher learning. It's going to help us, evolve. So again, when you're dealing with dark parts of yourself, you're dealing with parts of you that are wounded, these victim parts of you that may have been taken advantage of, manipulated, betrayed, lied to, hurt, or parts of you, that you have not integrated yet that tend to express that outwardly as well. And so there could be a situation, going on in our lives where we feel like we're dealing with some difficult shadows, in our relationships, where kind of the dark side of the masculine is kind of coming out, not coming out, coming up and out, coming up and out on a collective level, and where we have an intuitive nature that can really bring us deep within ourselves to help give us some distance with those shadow sides of us, not necessarily distance, but healing, can bring us healing, can bring healing that helps actually protect us. Like truly, if you want to protect yourself from your darkness or what's not safe out in the world, you have to deal with your own darkness. You have to reveal it, you have to clarify it, you have to release it, you have to integrate it. And when you do that, you bring your own darkness to wholeness. That is what gives you protection, because then it doesn't get projected outwardly and manifested in your world in these experiences of hurt and pain and abuse and control and domination and manipulation and all that stuff that hurts. So we have, that trine with Pluto. So yes, there could be an intense transformative expansion around this new moon, but bringing about very positive benefits that ultimately help protect us. Let's talk a little bit about Mars in Aries. Mars is that energy of our will and our motivation. And so we have a lot of motivation in this new moon around our individual desires, and there might be a part of us that is just really ready to move on, ready to move forward, ready to move through our challenges, like ready to just keep going, wants to go fast, when it's in Aries, it wants to go fast. And so I actually saw a funny image for this, Mars in Aries conjuncting Chiron. And I saw like someone on one of those sporting boats that's like driving the sporting boat, and they've got like a tube on a rope connected to the back, and they're dragging people on the tube. And so it's supposed to be fun, right? You're driving the boat and you're dragging these people on the inner tube behind the boat. It's supposed to be like this fun experience on the lake or the ocean or something, you know. And but in this image, I keep seeing that the driver has to stop and deal with the people on the boat, you know, deal with the people on the raft, you know, on the inner tube, because they're scared. Because the rope is getting tangled, because, you know, something keeps going wrong, you know. So what I'm sensing about that intuitively is that there's definitely a part of us that feels ready, you know, that feels like we're in charge, that just wants to have fun, that just wants to move forward, that just wants to, you know, go for it, you know, that has a lot of that energy to move forward. But then we have these other parts of us that are scared, that are really uncomfortable, where things are getting tangled up, you know, where things are, you know, drifting out of alignment, where things are, you know, not able to really, things that are like holding us back within us, you know. And sorry, my nose gets so itchy when I start doing these updates. So yeah, what I'm sensing about that dynamic of Mars and Chiron at this time is that as much as we want to move forward, we're going to have that kind of pause, you know, where we have to slow down and stop, you know, and untangle ourselves from other people and realign, reset, deal with some fears, get past our limitations so that we can move forward again. And that's kind of like the very frustrating internal experience, internal healing experience that I see happening at this time, where just a lot of motivation towards those personal desires, but a lot of healing happening that forces us to slow down and realign, and forces us to reset. And, you know, when it comes to our relationships, these may be related to our fears, where we're going too fast, where, you know, we've got too many twists and turns happening in our relationships, where we need to slow down, where we're getting freaked out, where we're getting triggered, and, you know, where we have to kind of slow down and reset in our relationships. You know, when things are going too fast, when things are getting too scary, when things are getting too entangled, when things are getting too out of alignment, can we, you know, as much as we just want to keep moving forward on things, can we just actually slow down or stop for a moment and just reset? You know, and that's kind of what I see happening around this Chironic Mars energy and how it's interacting with this whole relational kind of growth period theme happening on a collective level here. Pluto is also going to be in a sextile with Neptune in Pisces, and so Neptune's going to be at the 29th degree, and so there's really this emphasis on discerning what's real at this time. Like, what is really happening, you know, in my life? I mean, is this person a friend or a frenemy? Is this person committed to me or not committed to me? Is this person helping me or not helping me? Is this person, you know, loyal or not loyal? Is this person a threat to me or not a threat to me? There might be like this difficult discernment happening here, where we've got these fears of like are these relationships being actually going to harm me, or are they harmless, even though they're scary, even though they're intimidating, even though they're threatening, even though they're triggering me, you know? And so I see that kind of wishy-washy energy around our transformation, you know, in our relationships, you know, or something happening in your life. It really depends your chart and where this is happening for you, where Pisces is. But, you know, there's something that needs to be discerned, that has to be discerned, that's difficult to discern, but you can, you know, this healing that you're doing, this transformation that you're doing, this coming into your power that you're doing is helping you to discern that. And it looks like it's an important time to discern that, you know, it's like before you move forward because Neptune's at this 29th degree. It's kind of like before we move forward, we really have to discern this, otherwise, we're going to have to deal with it, So Pluto's also going to be trining trining Uranus and Taurus. It's going to trine Jupiter. I already mentioned that. It's going to trine Mercury. So overall, we might have this broad perspective on this ascension process that we're going through, some of the hidden challenges that we might be facing, getting some good glimpses of the challenges that we're facing, preparing ourselves physically and mentally for what's ahead. So it's kind of like if you're going hiking and you hit this high point on the trail where you see the whole mountain range and you see the mountain in front of you, and the trail and how it's going to go to the top of that mountain. And it's kind of that time where you get this big perspective of like, I see the trail, I see where it's going, and I see that really difficult challenge on that trail. I see that shadow area on the trail. I see that rocky area on the trail. And from a distance, I can see what that challenge looks like and what I'm going to be going through. And, like this perspective is helping me understand the overall challenge that I'm dealing with and the overall healing that I'm trying to embody, and the overall change that I'm trying to embody within me and in my relationships and in the world and what we're creating. And again, this is all benefiting us with Uranus in Taurus. It's all benefiting us to come into more of our abundance, to come more into our sense of security, to show up more steady and reliable, and to really build something new, to really build new change. Okay, so another thing I need to mention about Pluto, though, is that it's going to be squaring Mars. And so, yeah, this could bring up, it could bring up, this reminds me of games, like power games, like kind of like two people playing chess, and one of them wins because they're manipulating, or one of them wins. It's kind of like manipulation versus willpower. It just kind of feels like power games, like aggression, asserting, battles, challenges, manipulation, domination, control. Like that energy is getting a crunch. That we might be dealing with. And this is a part of the healing process. So we might be confronting where we have these dynamics within ourselves, where we're playing out power games in our relationships, where we are manipulating, where we are controlling, where we're obsessing, where we're being too aggressive, being too assertive, where we're fighting instead of communicating. Like we might be dealing with that kind of crunch within us, and how either we do that and express it through us, or where we, again, physically manifest it by projecting it outwardly and creating it outside of us, and where we become a victim to that. But, because Mars is conjunct Chiron, this is kind of the wounding that I believe is coming up to the surface for healing. Again, we have Hygeia that will be conjunct Chiron at this time. Hygeia is the goddess asteroid of miraculous healing. And so, our wounds are going to come up at this time. They've been coming up for a while, and they're going to heal. It's an opportunity to heal, and it can heal miraculously. So, if you feel that tough growth challenge around that new moon, embrace it, because it is a deep healing. It's a very deep healing. We also have Pluto trining Lilith. Pluto in Aquarius and Lilith in Virgo. Having Lilith in Virgo is all about dealing with our feminine wounds, dealing with our feminine smallness, dealing with the ways in which we actually embody our feminine power. Virgo is an energy that helps us embody. It provides structure and solutions and growth and embodiment and healing and service, and so having Lilith here is really having us confront our shadow sides around service, our health, the details in our lives, where we don't embody stuff, where we have a hard time embodying or growing, or, the wounds around, growth and healing, things like that. And so we have, Pluto trining Lilith. I mean, we're going to be reclaiming that feminine, authority. We really have, feminine energy speaking up, in these new moon, full moon cycles. And, feminine energy is coming to a type of authority. I mean, we have Pluto squaring Eris as well, the warrior goddess. And so again, we have that crunch with both, basically that warrior energy within us, our masculine side and our feminine side. Both that warrior energy within us is getting a big growth period around this new moon, where, yeah, like I'm starting to sense it, with everything that I'm saying. It's like, man, where do we fight and battle it out instead of communicate, instead of connect, instead of being fair, instead of being diplomatic, like where are we still fighting and battling and just like hurting each other and being unfair and dominating and controlling each other, when we really need to be communicating, when we really need to learn some new skills, when we really need to embody new relationship skills. Like, I feel like this new moon is definitely like emphasizing this. We have Pluto also opposing Eros. Am I getting this right? Eros? Yeah, so I'm sensing more of that immaturity that we're dealing with. Eros is about pleasure, what brings us pleasure. And, we might just have some immature parts of us that are going back and forth on making decisions and how to handle these things that we don't like. And then we have this very kind of motherly energy coming in, because we have Eros in Cancer, and so a lot of pleasure through nurturing and caring and, providing that kind of motherly energy to things can bring us pleasure here. But that is opposing Pluto. And so we might be dealing with that, that immature kind of dark part of us that's going back and forth on things, that's kind of making decisions and taking actions from this immature place, and where we can really bring in our motherly energy to kind of correct that, and stop sulking, stop, victimizing, stop being indecisive, just follow your intuition, just, stop thinking too much about it, just follow your intuition, so it seems like making an intuitive decision, nurturing yourself, choosing what brings you joy and pleasure, could be a part of this too. But again, I sense that you need, having to grow up, having to deal with our inner child, having to, do what's best for you, even if it's uncomfortable, not letting these dark parts of us control our thinking and mismanage our relationships, mismanage the way we navigate what we're creating in our lives. Relationships can be so valuable in creating our dreams, especially if you have a big dream. You're gonna need relationships. So, if you have a big dream, you're gonna need to know how to communicate. Need to know how to have social skills. Need to know how to work with other people. Need to know how to manage other people. And so, you might not like these types of growth periods on the planet, but they're there to help us. This is a time to actually embrace the growth period and learn how to communicate, because when you communicate, you don't have to fight, right? You don't have to fight when you communicate. So we have the South Node We have the South Node in Libra, and it is actually trining Mercury, Venus, the Moon, and the Sun in Gemini. So it's going to be trining this new moon, which means that we have a natural support from the South Node at this time. We can bring about so much wisdom and gifts from our relationships and our values from the past. And, it's like our wisdom, our relationship wisdom is really coming in effortlessly at this time. Stuff we've learned from the past. It could even be that we're able to pull on resources or pull on other people that are maybe professionals or resourced with a lot of wisdom around relationships. Things like coaches, programs, therapists, healers, counselors. Like there's people out there that have done this, that know about it, that have a lot of wisdom around it, that can really support us. Why not allow that support? Why not receive that support? So that support is definitely coming in effortlessly. There could be people in our lives that can support us. We can reach out to people to support us. It's really coming in. It's there. But yeah, this learning that we're doing around this new moon, this new information that we're coming into around relationships, less about temporarily, it's less about the fun and the pleasure and more about training and practicing and embodying new skills. Definitely releasing old relationship dynamics with Chiron opposing the South Node in Libra, and conjuncting the North Node, which means our individual healing is what's changing our relationship dynamics. We have Chiron sextiling Venus, and that could be where we're, again, showing up with new communication skills, new agreements, new interactions. And I think we might be dealing with parts of ourselves or other people who are really struggling to really embrace the healing process. There's just some people that we might be dealing with, or parts of us within us that just really stubborn around healing, really just stuck in their ways, really not understanding how healing works, there might be some struggling going on around that. And really we have to remind ourselves that it's a choice. You have to choose it. They have to choose it too. No one's really going to change unless they choose it themselves. And so we might be confronted with parts of ourselves or parts of other people where they don't really want to change. They have to really choose it for themselves. They might be in a growth period around actually choosing if they really want to heal or not, really want to change or not. But overall, what's good about all this like Chiron kind of energy is that it's conjuncting Hygeia, the goddess of miraculous healing. And so it just feels like everything that's coming up to the surface right now is going to really be healed. We really have a lot of support with just things healing effortlessly, things healing naturally, things finally healing that have been there for a long time, where we can become very smart, very educated, very trainable, kind of like a dog, like getting a dog that's a really smart dog. They're really smart, they're really trainable, they're willing to do a lot of work, and once that dog is all trained up, it's an awesome dynamic, and same with our relationships. Like once we do the work and we go through some of the hard stuff with each other, man, that can be such an awesome dynamic, in a relationship. All right, I think that's about all I have to say about the new moon. There's more I could elaborate on, but at some point I do have to end the video. If you're interested in working with me, I do offer personal sessions. If you're going through a growth period that you need help moving through some of these wounds or limitations that you're dealing with, I do offer energy healing work, and you can find more information below if you want to book a session with me. All right, guys, take care. Bye.